The Companies and Intellectual Property Commission has announced that it will embark on a mass deregistration of companies that have not met their obligations. CIPC is set to deregister about 800,000 non-compliant companies. The obligations include the timely submission of annual returns and ownership declarations. The CIPC says deregistration will address the high number of inactive businesses and mitigate the risks posed by dormant companies. The CIPC is responsible for maintaining an up-to-date register of companies and closed corporations, or CCs. For more on this matter, we are joined by the CIPC Commissioner, Advocate Rory Voller. Advocate, good to have you. Thank you so much for your time, because I think we're realizing that we've got lots and lots to explain to viewers if I can ascertain from the voice messages and the X's that we've been getting in response to this.
Good morning, Leanne, and good morning to all your viewers.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a mass deregistration process because one of the principles and priorities that CIPC had is to have a register that has a lot of integrity in it, a register that's up to date, and a register whereby people can use it, the business community can use the register in order for them to interact, contract, and basically get relevant information from. The fact that we have so many dormant companies who have failed to comply with two areas. One is the failure to lodge what is called an annual return, which is basically an information to us as a CIPC, as a registrar of companies, that this is our information, this is where we're located, these are our directors, etc., etc. They have failed to do that. And what the law says is that it's after only two cycles, consecutive cycles of failure to lodge the annual returns, that one gets placed into deregistration. So it's not a process that we rush to, not a process that we quickly want to try and amend the register and make it relevant, but one that takes a period of time, a couple of years, in order for that non-compliance to exist. And the second part is that because there's a new requirement by law in terms of beneficial ownership, I think you do know that South Africa has been grey listed, and one of the aspects of grey listing is that we should know who is behind companies, who profits from companies, who is actually making the decisions behind companies, and that is called beneficial ownership. So that is another requirement for companies to send to CIPC as part of a return, and companies that fail to do so, this 800,000, they are responsible for that non-compliance.
And it's vital. I mean, this isn't something that I imagine you do without kind of putting in a lot of work behind the scenes into it. I mean, you're not just going to go in and close these companies without doing all the due diligence and without looking into exactly what is needed. Do you find that of the majority of these companies, they're actually inoperational? They've perhaps, the name's been registered and it's just lying there dormant, and there's actually no activity whatsoever. Because many people have been writing in and saying, but what about all these people that are going to lose their jobs? Let's perhaps look at that angle.
So the one aspect is that we do mass campaigns, right? We do webinars, we do mass social media, we do mass on our website, we do, like we're doing now, we do mass media campaigns, and we also do legal aspects of it. So we contact the companies directly. We write to them directly to say, look, you have failed to lodge, you have failed to comply. What's going on? We just don't rush to deregistration. We give them a long period of time in order for them to bring their returns up to date and basically be legal. So there's two aspects that are here that you're mentioning, Leanne, and I think you're quite right. We're touching on that. One is that there is a high level of dormancy. So South Africa has got a bit of a registration culture. I always like to say that. And one of your viewers was absolutely spot on when they said that people rush to register, but they don't really have a plan about how to run a business, right? They don't really have a plan about marketing. They don't really have a plan about business sense. They think registration is going to give them something. It only gives you limited liability, which is a great thing, but you still need to do business. So we have a lot of those who are dormant. They come into the system, they get registered by the thousands. We do something like over 400,000 new companies on an annual basis. So we get a lot of those. They come into the system, they never actually do business. I'm sure many of us, and I like to say this, many of us have cousins, uncles, aunties who have started companies that never actually did any business.
You think
those
of a name. And that's kind of how it happens. You sit around a table, you think of a name and say, man, it'll be so good. Let's just register the names. And then you've got this, you've sort of had one or two beers around the fire and you're going to change the world with it. You find a name, you register it, And then Monday morning, you're like, okay, I don't think this is going to work. So that's the category you're talking about.
Yes, that's 100%. You 100% right. And those are the ones that are sitting on our register.
Yeah.
They're distorting the register. All right. And when we say we have just under 3 million entities on the South African register, it's not a true reflection of business activity. It's a reflection of a registration culture. That is the first aspect. The second one is that we just get companies who are active, who get their accountants or their lawyers or their company secretaries to do all their compliance stuff, and some of it just doesn't get done. Right, so people get work to do, business, they're active in business, they're on the business of doing business, and then they fail to do the compliance stuff. And not that it's a lot, it's a lodgement of a return, which in the great sense, it takes almost less than a day, a couple of hours to do. We pre-populate the form, we don't have to fill in lots of forms, and basically we make it easy for you to comply. So those are the twos. Those that have not failed to comply, and they rush to comply after we notify them.
So if I may, I mean, I want to get into the nitty-gritty, but if you can, from previous years, because this is not the first time that we've had this conversation, and I do know that this happens a lot. In fact, I think there were around about 600,000 companies last year that went through the same thing, the deregistration. Yes. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but if you look at the differentiation between the scenario 1 and the scenario 2, the beer around a fire decision or the one where they say, you know, you're not submitting the documentation, how do the numbers look?
The numbers look more on the side of dormancy, right? Okay. Because 90% of the companies which we register at the CIPC are what we would call the mom and pop small ones. All right. I like what you just stated. The anecdote you used about sitting around the fire. I think I must use that one. Yeah, it's basically those type of companies, right? Yeah. That are going to go into full deregistration, and they will never get back onto the register, because what happens is, and that is the reason why our campaign is twofold. One is to inform you of deregistration and your compliance obligations, and the other one is that when those ones that do get registered want to come back into the system, which is called reinstatements, we have a process for them to be reinstated. And those are the ones that are still functioning. Okay. So what happens, Leanne, and this is what we've seen every day, I get so many emails about this, is that they start going to their bank and they want to draw some money and they want to open up more contracts and the like, and suddenly the bank account is closed because the banks are directly connected to the CIPC database, and they see that they have been deregistered. And those ones flood us back with reinstatements, and we're welcome to have them back because they are functioning companies. Yeah,
it's a big thing, because that's where I want to focus now, because I imagine that there are mechanisms in place for these companies, these legitimate companies that for some reason haven't been giving all of the relevant details to you, and they want to appeal this deregistration. How will the CIPC address potential errors or disputes arising from this mass deregistration process? And is it going to cost companies a lot of money to get this re-registration?
Well, the reinstatement process is there in law, firstly. And secondly, the CIPC gears up for it. So, for example, we're automating some of the processes. And we're currently busy with a project relating to that. But in the interim, I've placed more staff, because we know that we get a lot of flooding of queries when it comes to deregistration, and a lot of queries when it comes to reinstatement. So I've made capacity within the CIPC to deal with those particular queries and those reinstatements, and we're also simplifying the process. The one aspect that we've put many, many years ago now is that for you to be re-registered or reinstatement, we use them interchangeably, is that you are required to prove to the CIPC that you were functioning at the time of deregistration. So what I've done as an interim measure, because we have so many thousands of these queries, is that I've relaxed that particular process. So if you say that you want to be re-registered, reinstatement, you're more than welcome to come. We've got the capacity to deal with it. We try and deal with them as quickly as possible, and I've relaxed some of the requirements going forward. Yeah. It's a very simple exercise.
And you're the first port of call, I mean, is to go through the CIPC. There's nobody else that can handle this, obviously, obviously if you've got a company that does it for you, or if you do it yourself, you are the people to come to, not the banks or anybody else, because obviously, as you mentioned in an earlier answer, they take a mandate from you and they are linked to your database.
Yep. So the majority of companies who function, they leave this to their accountant, they leave this to their lawyers who are commercially viable, and they leave it to their what they call company secretaries. The majority of them do that, okay? Especially the ones that are functioning and are active and are doing business. But the CIPC, one of our core values and mandates is that we should not complicate the system so much that people are required to use those type of intermediaries. All right. So the process is simple that you yourself, as a director of a company, can make an application to CIPC quite simply. On our website, cipc.co.za, we've set out all the requirements for you to be reinstated. We host a numerous amounts on our social media platforms, webinars and information sessions, and we use the media a lot, like yourselves, in order to inform people about the obligations and how easy it is to interact with the CIPC.
Advocate, just before I let you go, just a bit of advice. I mean, if I want to check on the status of my company, if I've got it there and I very well may be one of these companies that are going to be deregistered and I don't even know about it, say it was due to a change of email address or telephone numbers or whatever the case may be, you don't have it, you can't get in touch with me, but now suddenly it's deregistering and my list or my name is there and I don't even know it. Can I check on your website and see if I'm okay?
Absolutely. It is free. You go to what is called an e-disclosure, disclosing of information on the CIPC website. You put in the registration number that you have for your company or your close corporation, and it pops up. No charge whatsoever.
Brilliant. And then if you see a mistake, that's where we say, hang on, please don't do anything. You guys haven't contacted me, and then you can look into it from there.
Absolutely. We've got a call center that you can call. We've got email addresses, and we've got systems in order for us to interact with the public. Okay.
I hope this has been very helpful for people. It certainly has for me. Thank you very, very much for talking to us. Advocate Vali talking to us about a situation where the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission are going to deregister over 800,000 non-compliant companies. So go visit the website and make sure you're not one of them. Make sure that everything is in order.